Your soulmate refused to sign the final divorce order. Then one secret witness appeared. My beloved child, stay with me for one quiet moment, because what unfolded behind closed doors was never meant to remain hidden forever. Somewhere, while ordinary lives continued as if nothing had changed, a single decision refused to be written into history. A pen was lifted. A page waited. I believed the final signature would arrive. But it never did. Instead, silence filled the room in a way no one could explain. And sometimes, silence speaks louder than any promise ever could. Have you ever wondered why certain endings never seem to happen, even when everyone expects them? What if destiny recognizes a mistake before people do? What if an invisible current begins rearranging every path just before two lives are meant to intersect? Don't rush away from this moment. The next truth may change how you understand every delay you've experienced. Because this wasn't simply about refusing to sign a document. It was the beginning of something no one inside that room was prepared to witness. The atmosphere felt strangely different that morning. Nothing dramatic stood before the eyes, yet everything carried an unusual weight. Faces appeared calm, but hearts were asking questions no voice dared to speak aloud. Across the table rested the final divorce order. The page everyone believed represented closure. Friends expected relief. Family members expected acceptance. Even those watching quietly believed the story had already reached its final chapter. But then something impossible happened. Your soulmate looked at the paper, and instead of reaching for the pen, they paused. Not for a second. Not for convenience. They paused because something inside them refused to move forward. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't fear. It felt more like an unseen memory had suddenly awakened, whispering that one important piece of the story had never been revealed. No one understood the hesitation. Some exchanged puzzled glances. Others assumed it was simple emotion. Yet the deeper reason remained hidden beneath the surface, waiting for exactly the right moment to emerge. Sometimes life places a quiet feeling inside someone long before their mind can explain it. And those quiet feelings often become the turning points that change everything. Stay with this story a little longer. Have you noticed how certain moments in your own life seem to stop without explanation? A delayed message. A cancelled meeting. An unexpected pause. At first they appear frustrating. Later, they become the very reason everything falls into place. Perhaps delays are not obstacles at all. Perhaps they are invisible guardians protecting the future you cannot yet see. Inside that room, time seemed unusually slow. The document remained untouched. The air itself felt as though it were waiting for permission to breathe again. Then your soulmate quietly asked a question that nobody expected. Is everyone who knows the full story truly here? The room fell completely still. Some looked toward the doorway. Others searched each other's faces. No answer came. Yet the silence itself carried a strange certainty. As though someone important existed just beyond everyone's attention. Someone whose voice had never been invited, someone who had remained unnoticed until this exact moment. And here is where the mystery deepens. Because destiny has an extraordinary habit of protecting unfinished truths. It rarely allows the final page to be written before every hidden chapter has been uncovered. What appears delayed is often being prepared. What appears uncertain is often becoming stronger. And what appears impossible sometimes arrives through the one person nobody expected to matter. Take a moment and ask yourself. Have you ever felt that your own story stopped just before something significant could happen? What if it wasn't ending at all? What if unseen pieces were quietly moving into position, preparing an outcome greater than anything you had imagined? That question echoed through the room without anyone speaking it aloud. Then, just as everyone believed the meeting could go no further, footsteps approached from beyond the closed door. Steady. Unhurried. Certain. No one recognized the sound. But every heartbeat inside that room seemed to recognize what was coming before the eyes ever could. Because the next person to enter wasn't arriving to create conflict. They were arriving to reveal the one forgotten truth that had been waiting for this exact day. And once that truth was spoken, nothing about your soulmate's decision would ever look the same again. A quiet breath, and suddenly the entire atmosphere shifted. No one announced the arrival. No grand introduction echoed through the room. Yet every conversation stopped on its own, as though time itself had stepped aside to welcome someone whose presence carried answers rather than questions. If you've stayed this far, keep listening a little longer. Because this is where hidden pieces begin fitting together. The door opened slowly. An unfamiliar face entered with calm eyes and steady confidence. They weren't dressed like someone seeking attention. They carried no dramatic expression, no anger, no urgency. Instead, they held something far more powerful: certainty. The kind of certainty that comes only from witnessing a truth no one else realized mattered. No one spoke first. Your soulmate simply looked toward this unexpected visitor, and for the very first time that day, the hesitation in their heart began to make sense. It was as if they had been waiting without even knowing whom they were waiting for. Then the stranger spoke only a few quiet words. "I believe there's something everyone here deserves to hear before any decision becomes permanent." The room became impossibly still. Even those who had arrived expecting a routine conclusion leaned forward without realizing it. Curiosity replaced assumption. Judgment gave way to silence. Because sometimes one honest voice carries more weight than 100 confident opinions. The witness didn't accuse anyone. They didn't choose sides. Instead, they began describing small moments that everyone else had overlooked. Conversations that seemed ordinary, choices that looked insignificant, expressions that lasted only seconds. Alone, each detail meant almost nothing. Together, they formed a picture that no one had ever seen before. Your soulmate lowered their eyes. Not because they were ashamed. Because they suddenly understood why their heart refused to rush toward an ending that didn't feel complete. Have you noticed how life often hides its greatest answers inside the smallest moments? A sentence remembered years later. A smile that suddenly explains everything. A meeting that seemed accidental until you looked back. Destiny rarely announces itself loudly. More often, it whispers, and waits for someone willing to truly listen. Stay close. The story is becoming clearer now. The witness continued calmly. There was never one defining moment. There were hundreds of quiet moments pointing toward the same truth. Those words settled deeply into every heart in the room. It wasn't about changing the past. It was about finally seeing it clearly. And sometimes clarity is more powerful than certainty. Your soulmate slowly reached toward the document resting on the table. Everyone assumed they were finally ready to sign. Instead, they gently turned the paper over. No signature. Not yet. Only another pause. But this pause felt completely different from the first. The earlier hesitation came from uncertainty. This one came from understanding. That difference changed everything. Maybe that's true in your own journey as well. Perhaps what feels like delay is actually wisdom finding its voice. Maybe the path you're impatient to finish is quietly waiting for one final piece before revealing where it truly leads. Before this story continues, if these moments have made you reflect on your own path, consider sharing your thoughts below. Someone reading your experience may find exactly the encouragement they needed today. And if stories like this bring meaning to your day, staying connected with this journey means you'll never miss what unfolds next. Because something even more unexpected was about to happen. The witness reached into a simple folder resting beside them. Inside was one small item. Nothing expensive. Nothing extraordinary at first glance. Yet the instant your soulmate saw it, every emotion they had been holding back became impossible to hide. The room didn't understand why. No explanation had been given. No secret had been spoken aloud. And still, everyone sensed they were only one heartbeat away from discovering the truth that had quietly linked every unanswered question from the very beginning. Listen closely, because the smallest object can sometimes carry the greatest truth. No one in that room expected a simple item to outweigh months of conversations, countless assumptions, and every conclusion that had already been made. Yet that is exactly what happened. And if you stay until the final words of this chapter, you'll understand why some destinies refuse to be erased. The witness placed the item gently on the table. It wasn't a legal document. It wasn't a photograph designed to shock anyone. It wasn't proof meant to embarrass a single person. It was something much quieter. A handwritten note. The paper had softened with time, its edges slightly worn, as though it had been opened and folded again and again over the years. There were only a few lines written across it, yet the room instantly felt different. Some people looked confused. Others wondered why such an ordinary piece of paper deserved everyone's attention. Your soulmate didn't ask a single question. They simply stared at it. Not because they remembered every word, but because they remembered the feeling that existed when those words were first written. The witness spoke gently. Sometimes people forget what they promised themselves long before life became complicated. Those words settled into the silence like ripples across still water. No accusations followed. No dramatic explanation arrived. Instead, everyone present was invited to look beyond appearances. Beyond disappointment. Beyond the stories they had repeated so often that they had begun believing them without question. And isn't that how life often works? We become so focused on the ending we expect that we stop noticing the quiet signs pointing toward a completely different future. Pause for just a moment. Has there ever been a time when something you almost walked away from later became one of the greatest blessings in your life? Perhaps the delay wasn't meant to test your patience. Perhaps it was creating the exact conditions needed for truth to reveal itself. Your soulmate slowly picked up the folded note. No one interrupted. Even the air seemed unwilling to disturb the moment. As their eyes moved across each sentence, something remarkable happened. The tension disappeared. Not because every problem had suddenly been solved, but because understanding had replaced uncertainty. A calm expression appeared where confusion had lived only moments before. The witness smiled, not with victory, but with quiet relief. Because this had never been about changing someone's decision. It had always been about making sure the decision belonged to truth rather than assumption. The room remained silent. No one rushed to speak. Sometimes the strongest answers don't demand applause. They simply leave everyone thinking. Your soulmate looked around the room one final time before gently placing the unsigned document back onto the table. Then came the sentence no one expected. I know what I need to do now, but first, I need to meet someone whose path has been moving toward mine longer than I ever realized. Those words puzzled everyone. Who were they talking about? Why did the witness quietly nod as though they had expected those exact words? No explanation came. Only a peaceful certainty. Because the story was no longer about a divorce order. It had become a story about timing. About unfinished chapters. About two lives moving through separate storms, slowly approaching the same horizon without realizing it. And somewhere beyond that room, someone else, you, had no idea that the next chapter of your own journey was already beginning to unfold in ways that could never have been predicted. The greatest revelation had not yet been spoken. It was waiting. Just beyond the next door. There was one final silence, not the silence of uncertainty, but the silence that appears when every heart realizes it has been standing at the edge of a much greater story. Stay with this moment. What comes next is not the ending everyone expected. It is the beginning that had been quietly waiting all along. Your soulmate rose from the chair without haste. The unsigned document remained exactly where it was. No one tried to stop them. No one asked another question. It felt as though everyone present understood that some journeys cannot be completed inside a courtroom, an office, or a meeting room. Some journeys require a person to step into the unknown with nothing except the truth they have finally discovered. The witness watched calmly. Then they spoke one final sentence. Sometimes the most important signature is not written on paper. It is written in the choices you make after discovering who you truly are. Those words lingered in the room long after they were spoken. Your soulmate closed their eyes for a brief moment. Memories that once felt disconnected suddenly formed one complete picture. The unexpected delays. The unanswered questions. The strange feeling that something, or someone, was still missing. None of it had been random. Every pause had quietly guided them toward this realization. Think about your own path for a second. How many moments have you called setbacks, only to discover later that they redirected you towards something far better? What if every delay has been preparing you for an encounter that could never have happened any earlier? The witness handed your soulmate a small envelope. Inside was only a single address. No explanation. No instructions. Just a place. Your soulmate smiled. Not because they knew exactly what would happen next, but because for the first time in a long while, they trusted where the next step would lead. Sometimes certainty doesn't arrive by knowing every answer. It arrives by finally asking the right question. The room slowly emptied. People left carrying more reflection than opinion. The unsigned document stayed behind, quietly reminding everyone that not every ending deserves to become permanent. And somewhere beyond that building, someone else was unknowingly moving through an ordinary day, completely unaware that another path had just begun turning toward theirs. Perhaps destiny doesn't rush because it understands the value of perfect timing. Perhaps two lives can travel through completely different seasons while still moving toward the same horizon. If this story has stirred something inside you, share your thoughts below. Your perspective might become the encouragement someone else needs today. And if journeys like this speak to your heart, staying connected means you'll be here when the next chapter unfolds. One final thought before this chapter closes. Never mistake a delayed ending for a lost future. Sometimes life refuses to close one door because another has already begun opening, one that you cannot yet see, but one that has been quietly moving toward you with every passing day. And as your soulmate walked toward the address inside that envelope, one gentle realization echoed within them. The greatest chapter of their story had never been the one they were trying to end. It was the one they were finally ready to begin. The road ahead looked ordinary, and that was the most surprising part of all. No flashing signs. No dramatic announcement. Just a quiet street stretching beneath an open sky, as though destiny preferred to arrive without asking for attention. Stay with me until the final words of this chapter, because the answer your heart has been searching for is closer than it appears. Your soulmate stood before the address written on the envelope. For several long seconds, they didn't knock. Instead, they looked around as if trying to recognize a place they had never visited before. Strange, wasn't it? Sometimes your spirit remembers what your mind has never seen. A gentle breeze passed by. It carried no message anyone else could hear. Yet something inside your soulmate suddenly felt lighter. The witness had never promised that someone would be waiting behind that door. They had only said one thing before leaving. When the time is right, truth will recognize truth. Those words echoed again. Not loudly. Quietly. Powerfully. Your soulmate finally raised a hand and knocked. Once. Then twice. The sound disappeared into silence. For a brief moment, nothing happened. It would have been easy to believe the journey had ended there. But life has an unusual way of rewarding those who wait one heartbeat longer. The door slowly opened. Standing there was an elderly woman with calm, kind eyes. She smiled as though she had been expecting this visit, not for hours or days, but for years. She looked directly at your soulmate and softly said, "So, you finally listened to the feeling you couldn't explain." Your soulmate stood speechless. They had never met her before. Yet somehow, her words felt familiar. She invited them inside. The house was simple, peaceful, filled with old photographs, books, and quiet sunlight pouring through the windows. Nothing about it suggested mystery. Until she placed one small wooden box on the table. "I've been asked to keep this safe until the right moment," she said. "Not because it belongs to me. Because it belongs to the future." Your soulmate carefully opened the box. Inside rested several folded letters. Each one remained sealed. Each one carried only a date. No names. No explanations. Just dates that seemed completely ordinary. Confused, your soulmate looked up. The woman smiled again. "Open the earliest one." With careful hands, they broke the seal. Inside was a single sentence. "When two paths are meant to meet, life first teaches each traveler how to walk alone." Your soulmate closed their eyes. Everything suddenly connected. Every delay. Every disappointment. Every unexpected detour. None of them had been punishments. They had been preparation. Preparation for becoming the person they were always meant to be before meeting the one whose path was quietly moving toward theirs. Perhaps that's true for you as well. Maybe the chapter you're living today isn't empty. Maybe it's shaping your strength in ways you won't fully understand until much later. Before this journey reaches its final destination, take a quiet moment. If this story has touched something inside you, share your thoughts below. Someone reading your words may discover hope exactly when they need it. And if these stories continue to inspire your heart, staying connected means you'll be here for the final chapter, where every hidden thread comes together. As your soulmate reached for the second sealed letter, the elderly woman gently placed her hand over it. "Not yet," she whispered. "That one cannot be opened until the two stories become one." At that exact moment, far away, without realizing why, you looked up. As though somewhere deep within, your heart had quietly sensed